Hey everybody, for my learning epiphany, technology epiphany, I wanted to reflect on the conceptual framework that I did at the beginning of the semester. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see my 5 essentials for learning with technology that you saw earlier in the semester. And I just wanted to walk through those 5 based on some of the readings that we've done, the conversations that we've had, some of the things that really stood out. So each one will have one bullet point that I'll expand on. So the first thing is overcoming obstacles. Don't let your technology bias or institutional bias get in the way of wonderful learning platforms. Mine was my online presence. So it really boils down to I don't like having things posted and videos of myself, photos of myself, things like that. Um, when we talked about in week one, Prinsky's 2001 about digital natives versus digital immigrants, well, under that definition, I am a digital native because I've been able to walk through most of this technology as I was growing up. So that was one thing that Robin talked about earlier, that argument doesn't always align with those who belong in those two categories. So, but exposure does help. So I think things like this, walking through some technology, trying to step out of my comfort zone for my students to have more of an online presence, as that's what they like. Second, building blocks. What needs technology to help you get through to your students? Show and tell is one thing that I really wanted to focus on. Aaron's timeline is something that I can see in my classroom. The flip grid that we saw, I have never really been a big Google user other than Google Docs. So seeing some of these things starting to show up was very, very helpful for me to understand how I can incorporate different things. So finding those building blocks as we move along. What's new? Number 3, stay up to date on what's going on. Show and tell helped that as well. But to me, accessing teachers and having conversations that we have had, that concept map that we did in week 4 when I was doing the discussion leading, helping me visualize what is everybody doing? What's the understanding? Emily had that wonderful do's and don'ts of copyright. As we are starting to create an idea of what teachers like, dislike, been using, is we need to have these conversations, whether it's in our professional development strands or however it boils down, having these conversations with students. Palfrey and Gasser 2008, the burdens and blessings, that conversation that we've had was very beneficial to me as well. So number 4, how do I grow? How does technology fit into the classroom without being there for technology's sake? So access to resources. Continue to read these type of articles. Continue to push the envelope. Going back to the conversations with teachers, learning, teaching leadership, assess infrastructure. All those things is something that has to happen on a continual basis. We can't just have a checkpoint to see what is happening to make sure that I am growing. And I have to step outside of my comfort zone, as I talked about in the first one. And then finally, we're talking about what is effective. How do we assess what is working and not working once implemented? This number 5 that I had was probably my biggest epiphany. Video games is not something that ever crossed my mind as something that was, 1, accessible, and 2, really needed in the classroom. After doing the gameplay reflection, which I did Star Wars Battlefront, and through that I found multiple ways that students are following rules, or trying to establish what is important within that game, things that we are wanting to do within our educational classroom. William and I had a good conversation back and forth about the difference between violent video games and preference for it. So he really pushed me to think about, what do I consider violent? What do I consider a video game? Why am I not incorporating those things? We have a student in the School of Communication that does gameplay construction for some of his design classes. He's in the TV department, but he is pushing the envelope, and I've had conversations with him because of this particular class. And then one thing that stood out, it was either last week or the week before, the only privacy we have left is what we don't say and what we don't do. And I think I commented on it in one of the Google reflections that we had. That's really what it boils down to. We have to be the front line of having these conversations. So I just wanted to step back through my conceptual framework, walk through some of these 5 things that really stood out to me, and hopefully the rest of us, as we are having these conversations, debates, discussions, pushing our understanding of technology and its use in the classroom. So it's been a lot of fun talking to you this semester. So hopefully you've had some of these similar epiphanies, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.